3 exercises to avoid in your hard enduro fitness training. So one of the problems with getting fit for enduro, especially if you're working full time, is that you've only got a limited amount of time to be able to go and train. And so that's really important to make sure then that you're doing the right stuff, because you've only got a small window to be able to hit the most effective exercises to actually help you on the bike. And the problem is when you do that training and you make the time and the effort to go and train, as well as working full time, is one of the most frustrating things that can happen is that you make that sacrifice, you put that effort in, and then still don't see the return and the improvement on the bike. Because then you start to question, you're going, well, why am I even doing this in the first place? Might as well just sit at home. So what I'm going to do in this video is give you the top 3 things to avoid with your training, and just give you some more effective options that are going to help you a little bit more with your training, and get you a better transfer over to your riding and racing. So first thing that stands out is isolation exercises. Okay, so what are isolation exercises? Isolation exercises are exercises that isolate a specific muscle group. So I'll give you an example here. If I put you guys down here for a minute, I'll just adjust the angle here so you can see me a bit better. So what an isolation exercise is it's an exercise that isolates a specific muscle. Okay, so if I do, let's say I do a bicep curl, for example, with this dumbbell, that's called an isolation movement. And the reason that it's called an isolation movement is there's a few differentiators. Is there's only one joint moving. So notice when I do the bicep curl, there's only one joint moving. My shoulder's in the same spot, my knees, my hips, my ankles are all in the same spot, but I've got one joint working. Okay, it's an isolation exercise because it isolates a muscle, which is the bicep. Okay, that's why it's called a bicep curl, because it isolates that muscle. Now, the reason that I'm not the biggest fan of these exercises for riding and racing is because when you're on the bike, your muscles aren't working in isolation. Okay, there's no point when I'm on the bike where I've just got my bicep working on its own. When I'm on the bike and I'm in, say, the attack position, I've got everything working from head to toe. I've got my calves working, my quads working, my hamstrings working, my ass working, my core working, my back working, my arms working. Everything's working together. It's a multi-joint exercise riding, okay, not a single joint exercise. So what can you do instead? Instead of doing isolation work, you can do what's called multi-joint movements. So multi-joint movements are movements which use multiple joints in the one movement. So an example of that type of exercise would be like a back squat. So if I do a squat, I'll show you guys with a barbell. Okay. When I do a squat, you'll notice I'm bending at the hip and I'm bending at the knee. Okay, I'm bending at the hip and I'm bending at the knee, all in the same exercise. Bending at the hip, bending at the knee, all in the same exercise. So what I'm doing is I'm recruiting more muscles in one exercise. And that's going to be a lot more effective for riding, because that's what happens when you ride. Okay, when you're riding and you're in the attack position, you've got your knees bent and your hips bent, you've got multiple joints working at one time. So if you're doing a lot of isolation stuff and not a lot of multi-joint stuff, could be something worth changing around. I'm just going to get you guys again. And I'll just adjust this camera angle a little bit. Learning as we go here with the camera and the tripod. The next thing that I've got is long endurance. Okay, second thing to avoid, long endurance pieces. So what a lot of riders will do is they will jump on this bad boy. Okay, and what will happen is they'll jump on the rowing machine and they'll start pounding away. Okay, on here. They will start pounding away on the rowing machine and they'll be going for hours and hours and hours, okay? Or they'll get on the common one that I it's like, yeah, I get on the rower and I do 15 minutes on the rower. Yeah, I do half an hour on the rower. And the problem is with doing, putting a lot of long distance time in on a rowing machine or for any type of cardio, is it's not reflecting the intensity of your enduro riding. Because when you go and ride, you might ride for 3 hours, but the intensity is always changing. Okay, it's not like rowing on the rowing machine. It's not like just pulling at the same pace. You might have like a hill climb that takes a lot of effort, and that uses a lot of energy. It's all out effort. You've got to go, really wrestling the bike around to get to the top of the hill. But then when you get to the top, you might have a bit of single trail, which is relatively low effort. So you get a chance to catch your breath and have a bit of a rest until you get to the next section. So that's why instead of using a lot of longer distance stuff, what I recommend for our riders is that you use interval work or high intensity training. And the reason is because if we can do some high intensity training or some like sprint intervals, that's going to have a higher level of transfer over to our enduro riding, because we're teaching our body to work really well with those peaks and valleys of intensity on the rowing machine, okay, or in our training during the week, exactly like what's happening when we go and ride on the weekend. Just as a side note for that, I do get guys that ask, okay, well, should I be doing any of the longer distance cardio? Yes, you should be, but that's what you should be doing on the bike. Okay, well, if you're working on like doing 3-hour enduro rides or races, when you go and practice, go and ride for 2 or 3 hours. Don't go and ride for half an hour. Don't go to the motocross track and do 10-minute motos. Go and ride for 3 hours and build your longer distance cardio that way. Third thing to avoid, and this has got to be in the right context, so don't take it out of context, is body weight training, okay? And what I mean in this context is, I mean, if you're using body weight training as your strength work. So you've got to think about the weight of your bike, okay? Your bike weighs about 100 kilos, if not a bit more. If you're weighing in at 90 kilos, that's a 100 kilo bike, 90 kilo rider, 190 kilos you need to be able to wrestle around for, say, a 3-hour enduro. There is no amount of body weight training that you can do that's going to allow you to develop adequate strength to wrestle around 190 kilos, okay? So, like for me, I weigh about 95 kilos. So if I'm doing, say, body weight squats, right? These body weight squats are always at 95 kilos, okay? Doesn't matter how many of them I do. I can bang out 1,000 of them. They're still only at 95 kilos. But if I've got to go and ride then a 100 kilo bike, I've got 195 kilos I'm trying to wrestle around on the weekend. So I've got to be able to keep that in mind. And that's why I'm not the biggest fan of body weight training for strength work, is because it's capped, it's limited at your body weight. You can never get past that. You can't build strength past how much you weigh. So that's why I love this thing. Okay, that's why I love using the weights. That's why I love using the barbell. That's why I love using the squat rack, because the gains in strength that you can get with this thing are infinite. Okay, they don't stop. They're not capped out, because I can always add more weights to the barbell. Okay, I can always get myself stronger, and I can keep increasing. I'm not capped by my body weight. So for that, what do I recommend with our riders is we want to limit the body weight work for our strength work. We don't want to rely on body weight training for strength. We want to rely on using some weights, okay? And make sure, like I said at the start, making sure that we're using the right type of strength movements to build strength that's going to transfer over to the bike, not just get you strong in the gym and then you get on the bike and you're going, hey, shit, this stuff's not working. So as a recap, first thing we talked about is isolation exercises. If we can reduce the amount of those that we do and increase our multi-joint exercises like some squats, which you can do with the bar, that's awesome. Second thing we spoke about was the endurance stuff, okay? So like we talked about doing long stuff on the rower. If we can minimize long stuff on the rower and we can maximize doing like interval work and sprint work, that's going to get a high level of transfer over to our riding on the weekend. And then the third thing that we just spoke about was our body weight training, okay? We want to try and minimize body weight training if we can, if we're trying to get strong, and we want to try and the best way to maximize it is to spend more time lifting weights and getting ourselves strong that way. If you're after some help building a race level of strength, okay, working on your nutrition and improving your performance overall on the bike, and you want everything planned and mapped out for you, apply for my Faster Laps program below. Otherwise, hopefully you enjoyed this video.